And now, from beyond our dimension, this is the JeffMara podcast. Here's Jeff.
My guest is Wendy Kennedy, prominent channel and spiritual teacher who has been communicating with higher dimensional beings for the past 28 years. She lectures around the world and was one of the 6 channels featured in the movie and book Tuning In, Spirit Channelers in America. And she is a featured guest in the docu-series Interview with Extra Dimensionals, currently seen on Gaia TV. Wendy, thank you for joining me and welcome.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, we're excited to have you. And if you don't mind, can we start with how you became a channeler in the first place?
Sure. I started having visions in the mid-90s, and at the time I really didn't know what they were. And I started doing some research, and well, these visions, I thought they were maybe associated with the building that I was living in. And as I studied, I found out, I came across channeling, and I didn't really know what it was. I didn't know anybody who did it, but I knew I was supposed to be doing it. There was such a deep pull inside to do the work. And so I started researching channeling, and I came across a couple books that had exercises, and I began to do those, and I would have very visceral responses. I would feel tingling and my eyes would flutter, but I couldn't get the words out. And I was doing a lot of work on myself at the time. I was doing meditation and yoga, and I would come back to it and then put it aside, and I'd keep practicing. And it took me about 9 months or so, and I had the awareness one day that I needed to sit down and have pen and paper. And once I started doing that, I had pen to paper. I started with the automatic writing, and it kind of took off from there. And I work with a lot of different beings, some angelics. I started with my own angelic guides, and then it moved more to galactic beings and beings from Arcturus, Sirius, Orion. And about 9 months in, the Pleiadians came in, and they now work as my primary guides when I work with the public. And the Pleiadians waited until I started channeling verbally. So about 9 months in, I was hearing the words in my head well in advance of writing them. And the guide said, it's time to put the pen down and try to channel verbally again. And because the guides work with tone and sound, the Pleiadians. And when we get to channeling, you'll notice that they sound different than I sound. It's not any one particular dialect that they have. It's really open vowels that they can modulate the frequencies. So in addition to getting information when they work, it's as if you're getting a healing as well. So once I started channeling verbally, they took point, and, we've never looked back.
Are you a trance or conscious channel?
I would say semiconscious. So it's a bit like a lucid dream for me. I'm aware of it in the moment, but if you ask me a few hours after channeling, I'll know the highlights. And a couple days later, I'll really have to think about it, unless it's specific information that was meant for me that I need to really hold on to. Most of it comes in and then fades very, very quickly.
Do you usually record the sessions and then go back and review them?
When I channel for myself, I do automatic writing. So that it helps me, because otherwise because it fades. When I write, it grounds it a bit more, the information. And if I need to go back and look at it, I can. When I do automatic writing, it's kind of all run together, but I can usually tell when I look at it what guide is coming through, because the script does change depending on the guide. And when I channel, there's more information than just the words. There are levels and layers to the information. And I like to describe it like the guide saying it's a nice day, but I know that it's 75 degrees. The grass is green. There's a light breeze. There are children playing. There's a lot more detail that's there. And when I open back up to access that information, I also open up to all those other levels and layers. So that's one of the things when I actually work with the automatic writing that I found so fascinating, is that I go back into that energetic state and it becomes available to me again.
What are some of the most profound things that you have ever learned by listening to what your channels have said?
I think it's really very simple what we need in order to elevate our frequency. I think we think we have to do hours of meditation, and only a few special people have gifts and abilities, but really all of us have access to these gifts. All of us can increase our frequency, and it's just a minor shift that we need to make in our focus that allows us access to everything. So, the guides have always, over after 28 years, their message hasn't changed all that much. And their primary focus is to empower us and really helping us to look at the subtle things in life and the subtle shifts that we have to make that have a massive impact. So I think for me, that's kind of one of the biggest takeaways. And one of the things that I think is so amazing is that it's not as difficult. It's not something that we have to learn from scratch. It's really just dropping the illusions and coming back to our heart center. And then everything else will flow from there.
Now, you also are involved in light language and galactic light codes. So I guess you write the codes and speak the language?
Yes. So when I first started channeling, the Arcturians were coming in, and I kept seeing these symbols, and I would draw them. I just, I couldn't stop thinking about them. And I asked them, I said, what is this? And originally they said, it's a star language. That's how they explained it to me. And once the Pleiadians came in, a lot of that kind of went away, and it kind of took a back seat. And I think it was probably around 2013 that the guide said, it's time to start working with the symbols again. And this is the language of light. And so I was drawing them, and they said, now you get to speak it. So that was an adjustment for me. That was something that I hadn't done before. And so I started speaking the language of light. And if you don't know what that is, it is Source's language, and it's comprised of light, sound, sacred geometry, and cosmic information. So there are all these carrier waves, just kind of like what I was saying before about the Pleiadians. When they work, we might process one sentence, but there's a lot more information that's contained in the transmission. And that's what happens with the language of light. It's multidimensional. And the symbols are the written form of that. And as we work with it, what it's really helping us to do is to attune ourselves to a frequency. So the language of light as it's spoken, or even as you see it in what I call galactic light codes, because they're galactic beings who are sharing the language of light with me. What it does is it speaks to the divine being of light, us having this physical experience. So it bypasses the language centers of the brain. And it's like somebody playing a note on the piano. If I asked you to sing the note of C, most of us don't have perfect pitch, and it'd be very hard to find that specific frequency. But if somebody plays the piano, they say, oh, that note, okay, I can do that, no problem. So it's just a reminder and a reference point. And that's what the language of light does. It helps us to adjust our energetic field to those higher resonances. So the guides describe it as a piece of spiritual technology. It really does help us to attune ourselves to our higher state of being, our natural higher state of being.
Are you channeling the light language directly from Source, or does it go from Source to one of the other beings?
Well, all of us are source energy. So there are other beings from different galactic systems that when I speak the language of light will come through, and they will blend their energy together. Oftentimes it can be a large group of them at once. So it's not just, oh, the Pleiadians are going to start, and then the Arcturians are going to come in, and then, another group here. They may all come in at once. And the reason these galactic beings are coming in is because there's that carrier wave of information. And many of these beings have already walked the path that we're on, and they are sharing their how-to, if you will, with us. So these beings know what it's like to be in physical form, to struggle with these issues, and that's encoded in the information that they're sharing. So that's why there are so many different beings, and it does change, and you notice that the frequency changes as I speak it. And so in essence, it is Source, but it is kind of colored by these galactic beings.
I was looking at the galactic codes on your website, and they're really nicely done. It's like a style of calligraphy. Did
Yeah.
you have to take calligraphy to be able to draw them, or?
And no, what I do automatic writing for the codes. So they give me the codes that way, and then I reproduce them on the computer. So, it's interesting. I think we have our monthly membership where we do a galactic light code, and I think we're at month 73, 74. So I've done a lot of codes over the years, and sometimes you can see that they've combined symbols, and it's really like kanji. It's a concept. They're not letters of an alphabet or anything like that. They're ideas that they're posing and putting forward. And you can see how they've kind of blended some of the symbols together, like they'll feel familiar. And it's changed a little bit over the years. Some of them have become a little more complex, but then the energies that we can hold and take have also increased. We're able to handle more energy. At the beginning, it was a lot for people. And now we've elevated our overall frequency, and we can take a little bit more in.
You've been channeling for over 2 decades, which is a long time to do anything. What inspires you to keep doing it?
Oh gosh, that's a good one. It's almost 3 decades, which is crazy to me. It definitely is a calling for me. I like doing the work. I'm fascinated in the information. It's amazing to me the transformation that people can have, the way that the guides have been able to help and support people from the feedback that I've gotten over the years. So I think that more than anything is what keeps me going. I mean, if it was about making a living, there are certainly easier ways to do that. So I definitely feel called to do the work.
Do you think something big
There
is going
seems
to
to
be
be more
happening soon?
paranormal
Because there seems to be more paranormal activity happening over the last couple of years.
Yeah, I think the higher we get in frequency, the more aware we're becoming of some of that energy that's around us. I know the guides talk about it, a lot of beings who are showing up, observing what's going on, some of them towards the light end of the spectrum, some towards the dark end, because this ascension process that we're going through, this increase in resonance, is going to affect the entire universe. The guides describe Earth as a grand experiment. So we have been donated genetic material from thousands and thousands of worlds. And along with that genetic material comes the emotional and physical experience of those species. So it's not just what humans have, but all life on the planet. And that's in our library. It's encoded in Earth's library. And because of that, we have a wide range of experience that we can have here, a wide range of emotions to experience. And the guides say, if you want to learn about emotions, where do you go? You go to Earth. Earth is kind of the school of emotion. So other planets, other systems, and it's kind of hard for us to think about. They may only have 6 or 8 emotions to play with. That's all they're going to explore in their game. And that this really was a game of descension and reascension. Can you go down in frequency and live under the illusion that you're separate from source energy? And can you come out of it? Can you remember who and what you are? And that was the setup for this game. And so that's kind of what we're in the middle of. We're remembering who and what we are, and we're moving back across that dimensional barrier, if you will, the shift from one dimension to another, one state of being. And the rules to the game shift when we go from 3D to 5D. And I guess I should probably talk about that a little bit. So 3D, the rules are very, very fixed. We have the illusion of separation. We've got duality in a very dense way. We've got light, dark, good, bad. We have the illusion of time. And then when you get up to the 5th dimensional level, there's no time. All things are occurring at once. There is duality, but it's not experienced in the same way. As you go higher in dimensions, a dimensional structure, the duality is closer. So here we've got black, white, and 1,000 shades of gray in between. Where the guides are, they say, they've got black, white, and maybe 2 shades of gray. So it's not very far apart. It's not as extreme. And the 4th dimension we needed in order to transit between these 2 games because they were so different. The 4th dimension is very malleable. You can project 3D rules of the game onto the 4D matrix, or you can project 5D rules of the game onto the matrix. And that's why sometimes we feel like we're going back and forth. We feel like we can have these amazing expanded experiences, but we just don't stay there. And then we kind of fall back to the default of that 3D perspective, where we see ourselves as being separate from everyone and everything. In 5D, we can see ourselves as being connected, but we can identify more as an individuated consciousness, or we can open up to experience things in their totality. So right now, the guides say we're actually in the 4th dimension, moving towards the 5th, but we haven't been able to sustain that higher resonance, that perspective that allows us to move across the dimensional barrier. And we're getting close to it, which I think is why we're experiencing more paranormal stuff. And right now, the guides say we are in the middle of what in the future they call frequency wars, that the period from 2019 to 2026, beings are kind of vying for our control of our thoughts, our emotions, our physical bodies. And so it's this time that we're really learning how to become empowered to hold our own resonance. And I think as we get towards 2026, you're going to see more in terms of a shift in energy and more of a direct contact with our galactic family.
I like how you put it that we're in a game. At some point, do you think the game is ever going to end completely and we'll all start over and create a new game?
Well, that's kind of a loaded question because it depends on how you're looking at it. So, there's a part of us that is already off having that experience in a different game, in a different reality, because we're multidimensional and we don't experience time as an aspect of source. That was one of the constructs of this game, and we think that time is linear. The guides describe time as a marker for an event, for a vibrational expression. So it's like going to a library and knowing where to find the book. There's a code on the book, your Dewey Decimal System, and you'll know where to find it in the library. And it's the same thing with the experiences that we have. So there will be some people who will want to dive into density in another way and may go off on another planet and have that experience. There are some who may say, all right, I'm done with duality for now, with the density. Let's go play in the 8th dimension. Let's put our focus there. But still, it's kind of a linear answer because it's all going on concurrently. There's an aspect of yourself that's already off playing there.
What is your process of channeling?
For me, it's pretty quick. So I've been doing this for so long. It's really about grounding and then putting myself in my heart center. And then once you're in your heart center, that allows you access to multidimensional information because you have 2 operating systems here. In order to play under the illusion of separation, we needed an operating system, and that's the ego mind. That's where all our programs of lack, limitation, and separation are. When you put yourself in your heart, and I'll talk about that and how you do it in just a second. But when you do that, you have access to multidimensional information. There are no filters that say you are disconnected. And to put yourself in your heart center, it's as easy as thinking of something that makes you smile. Typically, the guides will recommend that you think of an animal or a place that puts a smile on your face. And if you've got the right image, typically you're going to feel expanded and uplifted. You might feel tingling, new energy coming in. And if you're in a very heavy, dark place, maybe you're really sad, maybe you're really angry, you might have to work with this image for a while in order to feel yourself come up enough to feel that expanded state. Sometimes we're going up a rung or 2, but we still don't feel expanded. So it might take a bit of practice if you're in a really challenging space. But once you're there, you have access to multidimensional information. You have access to your guides. You have access to the Akashic records, the records of everything that has been, is, and will be. You can tune into that. You can tune into source. You're open to the full force of source energy. So for me, I just simply go into the heart-centered space, and then the transmission begins.
Hmm. All right. What would you like to channel for us now?
Sure. Before I start, I'll tell you just a little bit about the collective. So they reside in the ninth dimension. They don't have physical form. They're beings of light, and they work with tone and sound, which again is why their dialect sounds different than my own. And you might want to make sure you drink plenty of water over the next several days, because in addition to getting the information, it is as if you are getting a healing, and the water is going to help move that energy through the body. Yes, hello, dears. This is the Ninth Dimensional Pleiadian Collective, and it is a pleasure and an honor to have the opportunity to connect with you. So there's plenty of ground to cover, and some things we're going to make sure that we get into our conversation today. But before we start with questions, let us just say that you are far more powerful than you give yourself credit for. You have more answers within you than you could possibly imagine, and that really is the challenge for you, is that you're trying to imagine solutions through the ego mind that Wendy was talking about. And when you get yourself in your heart-centered space, you are able to access that multidimensional information. So any challenge that you're having no longer becomes a challenge. When you create something in your life that is a challenge, you also create the solution at the same time. They're two sides of the same coin. The challenge occurs in the ego mind, and the solution occurs in the heart center. So the moment you go into the heart center, the frequency, the awarenesses of your solutions become available to you, and things that you think are challenges can very easily fade away, because you have a recognition of, oh, that's really a non-issue, and this is what I need to know or what I need to do. So we just want to remind you of that. With the state of the world and everything that's going on, you are often putting your power outside of yourself. You are waiting for other people to make decisions and take actions, rather than deciding how you want to feel in this now moment within yourself. That is where all of your power lies. It has never been outside of you. It has always resided within you, you deciding the frequency that you want to hold in any given moment. And as you hold that frequency, you are pulsing it out. As you are pulsing it out, it is being reflected back to you in what you perceive in the world. So as you alter the frequencies that you hold, you will change the reality that is reflected back to you. And you will see solutions. You will see what we would consider to be more positive experiences on the spectrum. And you will be able to create dramatic change in your world. You're not waiting for other people to tell you, oh, your monetary system is going to be this, your political system is going to look like that. No, you're going to stand in your power and start making changes that will build towards a system that will support your higher vibrational state. All right, this is how you change your reality, and you are well on the way, and more of you are becoming aware of the power that you contain within you. All right. So where would you like to start?
Well, first of all, can you tell us what life or existence is like in the ninth density compared to where we are now?
Well, Wendy started to describe it to you. Yes. So you have an idea of your situation. Where we are, we do not perceive ourselves as being separate. We are a collective of about 2,500 beings of light, and we harmonize our energies, our thoughts, if you will, to project a combined energy. There are some beings who will hold resonances for planets, for stars, for entire galaxies. They will combine their focus. And we say, we're 2,500 individuals, but we are a collective. We can move to that awareness at any time. We can see ourselves as an individual consciousness and explore that reality as an offshoot of the reality that we explore as a collective. And it gives us some sort of contrast, because contrast is important. It allows you to know the opposite. So if all you had was good in the world, you wouldn't have an appreciation for it in the same way. When you have challenges and things that are a struggle, it gives you a different perspective of the light. And this is part of why Source created this game. And by source, we also mean you, because you are an extension of source energy. So we are exploring that. Where we are specifically, we align with Alcyone, which is the central sun in the Pleiades star system. And as the central sun, it is a repository of knowledge and records and information for the entire galaxy. So you within yourself carry records of the entire universe, but you partition that awareness off, and you limit your awareness to current reality, things that you have experienced while in this body. Sometimes there maybe bleed throughs or awarenesses of other levels of information within your own energetic field. You might have awarenesses of past lives. You might have awarenesses of programs that exist in the ancestral line. You might have these surface. They do exist in your field, but most of the time you keep yourself unaware of that energy. Where we are, we have an awareness of all of that. So you yourself are kind of like a paperback, all right, a book. And then every experience that every being, every life form has on this planet is stored in Mother Earth's version of a library. And you can access these libraries at any time. There are librarians who will help you. There are beings who dedicate their energy to help you locate frequencies. This is something that they're very adept at doing. You yourself could go looking for the information. It is not kept from you, but if you've got a guide, it can make it easier to find it, just as if you're going into a library and it's a very large library. If you ask the librarian, she can tell you immediately where it's at. You could wander around for 15 minutes to look for the book, but it is easier when there's somebody else who spends all their time there. And that's what we're doing with the galactic records. And we are here to assist you by sharing our knowledge and information about these records, things that have occurred not only on your planet, but in other star systems, that are lessons and archetypal patterns that are impacting you here and now. We are also keepers of frequency, and we monitor time and the illusion of time and the fabric of time, because there are beings who like to move through time, as it were, time jump. And sometimes when they do that, they can alter the fabric of time. And so we kind of monitor that just to make sure that too much damage, if you will, doesn't happen by beings who have now the awareness to move through time and project through time. And sometimes technology is used in time jumping, if you will. And that's typically when challenges occur with the exploration of time, and it damages the fabric. If you're just projecting your consciousness, it's usually not a problem. It's when technology gets utilized. It's like shoving a very large nail through a very small hole, if you will. It can damage the original material. All right, so that's what we do and how we operate. We're here to be of support to you. We're here to guide you as you remember who and what you are. And we want you to take your rightful place as stewards of this planet. Eventually, in the future, as Earth goes through her developmental process, you will be stewards for the entire galaxy. You're not there yet. You're a long way from that, but that happens in the future. But this is your first step forward in understanding who and what you are and working with the frequency of compassion. As Wendy mentioned, this is a game of descension and reascension. And this is a grand experiment. And there's that genetic material from thousands of worlds. Because you are holographic and fractal in nature, what happens to you happens to every molecule in the universe. Your experiences are recorded everywhere. What happens in one molecule of the universe is then recorded in your own energetic field. It shows up. Again, you partition off your awareness. But as you go through these experiences, it is transmitted to the rest of the universe. And also to some of these species throughout the universe who have had a very difficult time at going through this integration process. As you access the frequency of compassion, that is the gift that you will give to the universe. Because it is so dense here, and you're working with such extremes, you have access to a level of compassion that is rarely seen throughout the universe. We can access the frequency of compassion, but it's not in the same way that you access it, because you know how difficult the struggle is. You know what it feels like to be in that very dark place. And then you know what it feels like to be on the other side. And that is what allows you access to compassion. You've been there, you've done that, you've embodied it. And so the bandwidth, if you will, the breadth of the frequency that you access is quite intense. And it will help the entire universe heal and up level as that is broadcast, because other beings, it will show up in their field, and then they have the opportunity and the choice, if they so choose, to activate it. Just as we said, there are frequencies that are in your field, but you partition those frequencies off. If you so choose, at any given moment, you can access something that has been hidden from you. Think about your computers. There may be lots of files that you've downloaded, but maybe you just didn't go in and open it. You didn't think it was relevant at the time, but you thought, oh, I'll save it for later. Well, later comes and you think, oh, let's go open this file. Maybe it'll help me with the challenge that I'm having. And that's exactly what happens with the information that's stored in your energetic field. It is on your computer and you are accessing the file, but you don't have to. It doesn't have to run in order for your computer to operate properly. Or, maybe it's not a program that you want to work with right now, but it's there on your computer, as it were. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So that is what we do.
2,500 is such a small number, even comparing it to the number of beings on our planet. Is it very difficult to be able to ascend to the 9th dimension?
Difficult? No. It is an option to the soul. The soul wants to go and explore. You have this idea that you start at the bottom and have to work your way up, and you don't. You start at the top. You're part of source energy, and you fracture and go explore different levels. So there is an aspect of Wendy that is part of this collective of 2,500 beings. And this is why we've contracted to work with her in physicality. And there may be an aspect of those who are listening who are part of our collective, or have a remembrance of working with other beings in the Pleiades whose energy feels similar and they feel drawn to it. Is it difficult? No, you don't have to work your way up to this level. You just have to have a desire at the soul level to explore the setup that we are exploring. Some of you will be interested in that, and some of you not so much. You'll choose to focus on other things for the moment. But you have access to the records of our experience. So at any given moment, you can go in and access our experience. It is stored in your energetic field. As we started to say, you are the paperback. Earth is the library. And even think about your local library. And then your sun is a repository of knowledge and information for all life in your solar system. So it is another form of a library. And you can think about that as maybe the main library. And then for those of you in the United States, Alcyone is the Library of Congress. All right. It's quite vast and it holds all of those records. All of the libraries, when we talk about it containing that information, that's the main focus. That's the information that is held up front, if you will. Then all of the information to the universe is available in every single molecule. So you can access universal information from your paperback or from the Earth Library. All right. It's just easier to access when the information is up front. You don't have to, think about a library and all those books. You don't have to sort through 50 million books. When you've only got 10 books, it's easier to find the one that you want.
When someone is in communication with their guides, they're obviously getting help a lot of the time. Do you think that dilutes the life experience?
No, because in order to get information from your guides, you have to open up and seek it. We don't just offer it. And it may seem that way to some of you, like, oh, my guides have all of a sudden started talking to me. But there was a request at the soul level that you do so. You have to be a vibrational match. You are constantly co-creating a reality. And if you're not in vibration, if you're not in resonance with a particular frequency, say communicating with your guides, it's not going to happen. Most guides who are more, shall we say, light oriented, those guides are not going to interfere with your growth process. So even when you ask us, guides, what do I need to know? It's very difficult for us because we want to make sure we don't interfere with your growth process. So we have to look at the projection of your actions based on the information that we give you. We will look at all of that because remember, from our vantage point, time doesn't exist. So we can look at future moments based off of the resonance that you're holding and the trajectory that the impact of the information we give you will send you on. So we can look at all of this. That's why if you're very specific with your guides and you say, what do I need to know about this specific topic? We can give you a lot more information because you're seeking it and we know that you're ready for it. You contract with guides before you incarnate saying, I'm going down. I'm probably going to forget who I am, my true divine nature, and I'm going to need some support. So can you help me? And all of you have at least 2 guides who will show up and do that for you. Typically, they represent or project themselves, one as masculine, one as feminine, to help you to balance duality. That may not be their true nature. They may be both, all right? They may not have that, they may not have physical form. And so they don't have necessarily a male or female body. But all of you have guides. You have beings that you have asked to be of service to you in this way. And, if you are taking that information in, then there is a part of you at some level, may not be at the ego level, it may be at the soul level, that says, yes, I'm ready for that.
I speak with a lot of people who have crossed the veil and come back during a near-death experience, and a lot of them encounter archangels. What are angels or archangels?
Most of them are non-physicals. When you go from the fifth is from the 5th to the 8th, you still have a light body. You've got a physical structure, but it's not as dense as the one that you currently have. And then from 9 to 12, it's mainly light bodies, beings who are of light. Some of the angelics depends. Somewhere between the 8th and the 9th, some will have light bodies. Some will have just be pure light. They may be able to project a body, but this is typically the range that these beings exist in. And they will show up as this particular form because it is comfortable for most people. Even if you are not a religious person, it is an archetype that is known to you that can make you feel comfortable. If you saw a humanoid being with a lion's head on it, for some that could be a bit jarring because as you cross over, you may or may not have an awareness of yourself as an expanded being. It depends on what frequencies you choose to access. You may still identify as your personality, and that can be very jarring if you aren't quite ready for it. And so some of these beings will project a form that is familiar to you. And angels, it's a familiar story that as you cross over, you will encounter angels. So most of you don't put up barriers in the same way. Some people, when they cross, will see ETs. They will see people, if you will, beings in their original form or the form that they choose that is a better representation of their dimensional experience. But not all. That's why you see more archangels, because it's a familiar story without causing too much disruption in someone's belief system.
Well, I'm glad you brought up ETs because I'd like to know, will there be anytime soon, full disclosure, they'll be walking around here on the planet with us?
Probably 2026. Yeah. And that's hard for you all to kind of wrap your brain around right now. But think about how things changed from 2020 and COVID. Almost overnight, things rapidly shifted on your planet. And it has the potential to do that again around 2026. There's a lot happening in the background. There are, as we said, many species who are interested in what's going on. And in order to interact with Earth at this time, in order to kind of get a front row seat to observe what's happening in this grand experiment, you either had to have an aspect of yourself on the planet going through the earthly experience, or there has to be a genetic line connection. So it could be a planet that has aquatic life, genetic material that was donated to the aquatic life. They can connect with you because they have a genetic connection to Earth. Because it is such a vast universe and it has to be limited. There are only so many, I don't want to say seats because it's infinite, but it could be very easy for things to be tampered with and to interfere with Earth's natural progression and growth. And so that's in part why this is limited. And some are more leaning towards the light, if you will, and some are more interested in their own personal growth. They're not interested in the growth of the whole, which is the only difference between light and dark. So some are more dark leaning, if you will. And some of the beings of light who are from the lower dimensional ranges, so you've got some physicals in fifth dimension who are not as, say, pure in terms of non-interference because they already feel like your existence is impacting their existence. And so they may not take such a back seat. And there are conversations that happen with governments around the world, and ETs have been watching patiently, giving humanity time to process through their own fears and really step back more and more into their power. And, beings of light, we don't want to generate more fear. That is counterproductive to the ascension process. Ascension is really about releasing judgment. All right, letting go of your fears, good, bad, right, or wrong. Letting go of all of the attachments that you have. That is what ascension is basically. So for us to show up in physical form in front of you will still generate too much fear for most of you because you haven't dealt with your power issues human to human. So as you are at this period, looking at your governments, you're looking at your institutions, things that have kind of been running on autopilot, and you're looking at it and saying, this really doesn't work for me or for the general populace. All right, we're taking back our power and we're saying, this is what we want. That's what this period is about, to look out and say, yeah, not so much, no longer. This is what we want instead. You are taking back your power. Whatever happens at the human to human level happens human interdimensionally, human to ET. So if you've got fears, human to human, you will have that very same fear reflected back. It's just a different mass, same frequency. So these species have been waiting for you to take back your power. There have been deadlines that have been placed on disclosure for the government. And you're coming to one of those deadlines. So, these species have said, we are going to be showing up. Now, you can roll it out to your people and you can kind of control the flow of information if you want. And if not, then we're just showing up. And most likely that date has shifted over the years because sometimes these beings said, well, they're still not ready. So showing up isn't going to help. But right now it's set at 2026. All right. That's kind of a long-winded answer to your question, but the way that we see it, and we don't normally make predictions because things shift and you don't experience time in a linear progression. You don't really have a timeline. You have infinite now moments that you string together and give yourself the illusion of a timeline. And person A might go off in one direction and person B might go off in another. So we don't normally talk about predictions. And also because the moment we tell you something's going to happen, then you start putting your energy into it and then you create it. And we want you to kind of explore and create that on your own.
From what you're saying, I would guess then that this event kind of has already begun. And if
Yes.
so, do people even realize what's coming?
Some do, yes. There are more and more of you who are awake and aware, who are interested in metaphysics, interested in ETs, disclosure, UFOs, near-death experiences, things that are beyond your current version of reality, shall we say, the mainstream version of reality. You're opening up more and more to your awareness of yourselves as divine beings of light having this physical experience. So the question is when. We know some of you have been at this for a while and you're feeling very, very impatient. And what we would say to you is that impatience often comes because of your discomfort. There is a judgment or a fear that you're holding in your energetic field. You might feel that you need to be proven right, that you have a fear of persecution, or you feel like you've never gotten your acknowledgement. You're looking for that external validation. And if you can let go of that attachment and know within yourself and feel within yourself the truth of your perspective, then you don't need the external validation. And then you aren't going to feel that sense of suffering because it hasn't shown up yet. You can live in joy, in peace, in balance, in abundance, no matter what is going on outside of you. There may be challenges in the financial market, but as you are in resonance with abundance and you are pulsing it out, you will see it flowing back to you. It may come in unknown ways that you could not have even wrapped your mind around before, but it will find its way to you because you're in resonance with the frequency. The universe is responsible for the manifestation of form. Your part in the co-creative process is to hold resonance, project it, and be conscious of it when it shows up in your field and engage with it. All right. And it doesn't really matter what's happening in the collective. You can experience all of those things. It's first and foremost an inside job. And as you hold that resonance, you might have an awareness that others around you are having a challenging time, but it doesn't mean you have to live in that energy and suffer in that energy. You can still hold joy, happiness, abundance, love, peace, compassion, and be the living example to help lift others up, to remind them of their true divine nature. And when you do that, when you go into that heart-centered space and you hold those resonances, you're not suffering. And you observe what's happening in the current reality without being ruled by it. And it's very different. This is what taking your power back really means. It means choosing the frequencies that you want to hold in any given moment, responding to the outside world consciously, deciding the frequencies that you want to respond with. And this is what you're learning. This is a game of mastery. And Earth is not a beginner school. Earth is an advanced school. This is a very difficult game to play. Too often, again, you all think you're at the bottom and you've got to work your way up, but really you're in a school of mastery, and it requires repetition. So sometimes you will say, well, why do I keep recreating the situation? Because you're learning mastery. Think about the piano player. They don't just play a few times if they want to be a master pianist. They practice and practice and practice and try it again and again and again. And so do you with the same issues until you have mastery over the frequency and say, oh, okay, now I really understand what that energy feels like. I don't need to live in that frequency anymore. I can move to another and explore another frequency instead.
Do you think that this 3D dimension that we live in is a simulated dimension that we all co-created together?
Absolutely. Yes. It is a projection of reality, of consciousness. All of your universe is. It is a projection of consciousness that holds the container. All right. But too often you all think, well, it's just another outside being that has created this and I'm trapped inside. No, you are co-creating this together and you have free will. You might select to have an incarnation where you operate under the illusion that you don't have free will, but you are still an aspect of source. And as such, you are the ultimate creator and you can move anywhere in your consciousness that you want to go. but you might play under that illusion and feel like you are trapped. What would the trapped experience be like? But in truth, you're free to choose and move to another experience altogether. And you might think, oh, well, I've got to incarnate here, and then I'm going to have to come back because of karma. I'm going to come back 40 years later, and then another 140 years. You are a multidimensional being, and your consciousness can be projected down any timeline. So you will choose an experience that has the setup and the frequency that you want to explore. And it may not be in a linear progression. You might have a lifetime that's 3,000 years in the future, and then you might go back 1,000 years, and then you might go forward 1,500 years, and then you might go explore 100,000 years in the past. And in truth, it's all going on concurrently. But if you were to look at it linearly, this is what it may appear to you, that it can be all over the place. It's just the vibrational exploration that you want to explore. Now, there are some that will say you are stuck in this particular reality. And we would say, no, the soul chooses. All right. And it is a story that's being told because it shuts you all down. It makes you feel like you don't have any power or control. And in truth, you do. You absolutely do. And you are not stuck. You do not have to stay in this incarnational process. Most of you will, because you understand it's an illusion anyway. It's not really who you are. But at the end of the day, no, the soul can go anywhere it wants.
How does one deal with shame and forgive themselves?
So it's understanding that, whatever that shame act was, that it was an exploration of frequency. And you understand now what that frequency felt like. You understand the ramifications of that action. All right. And it's accepting of that exploration. It doesn't mean that you have to repeat it. Some people may repeatedly do what you would perceive as bad behavior. But it's an understanding that it's about vibrational exploration. And you went and you explored that frequency. And it's knowing that that's in the past. You can't change it. You've had the experience. It is added to your sense of self at the soul level. And now you can make a new vibrational choice. This is also kind of what compassion is about, because you've had that exploration of those dense energies, and you know how uncomfortable they can feel. And when somebody else is in that same position, you can have compassion for them. You can have empathy for them, sympathy for them. And that allows you to stay in that heart-centered space. So forgiving yourself is just recognizing that it was vibrational exploration. Now, if you're in the head, you're going to have the judgment. So in order to forgive yourself, you're going to have to go into that heart-centered space and acknowledging that it was a valid exploration of frequency, and one that you need not repeat if you so choose.
Do you feel that there is an urgent message that humanity needs to hear right now?
Well, it's really where we started at the beginning. You are far more powerful than you give yourself credit for. And we want you to own your power. We want you to become more and more aware every single moment of where you're vibrating. And just notice, observe where your thoughts are. What's the quality of your thought? Is it positive? Is it negative? What emotions are running? What's happening in your physical body? Is it heavy? Is it light? Is it tense? Is it relaxed? Is it buzzing? Are you numb? And as you just simply observe these things without judgment, you can actually allow that energy to run and be processed through the body. In other words, when you judge something, you stop the flow of energy and it gets held in your energetic field. When you just simply observe, it can start to run again. It can move. And this is how things are, quote unquote, released. All right. The energy completes its cycle. It moves through the body and on. But judgment holds it in place until you give yourself permission at some point to create a vibrational scenario that is similar. It might have a different mask, but it's the same vibrational essence. And that opens up the pathway for that energy to flow all that past energy that was stuck, because it's the same frequency, now has a pathway to move out. This is why sometimes you might have an experience, and on a scale of 1 to 10, when you look at it, you might think, this situation is maybe on an emotional level, a 1 or a 2. It shouldn't have a lot of charge. But when you have the experience, you go from, 0 to 60. You have a very strong emotional charge to something, which doesn't make logical sense based on the situation and what's going on in your life. It's because there is all this energy that's been suppressed, that's underneath it, that is the same frequency. And the moment you give yourself permission to feel it without judgment, it continues on and you're releasing it. All right. So that's a quick way for you to process energy, just to sit and observe without judgment. The longest any of you can hold a frequency, if you're just observing, is about 45 seconds. If you are observing and holding it for longer, the chances are you are getting lost in the story of it. You're thinking about the past, or recounting, or you're projecting into the future, trying to figure something out, how you're going to control it, how you're going to manipulate it. And it's really about bringing it back to the now moment through observation, pure observation. There's no judgment there. And that will open the pathway and it will dissipate. You feel like you can't hold on to it. All of a sudden, you might be very angry, and then all of a sudden you feel like, oh, it's just gone. It's like mist. You can't really hold on to it. And like we said, about 45 seconds is the longest you'll be able to. Now, there might be several rounds of this that you have to do. You might find that it comes up again. It's because there's more to be processed.
Wendy spoke earlier about light language. Can you give us an example of that?
Certainly. So we'll do an activation that will help you to connect with your own guides. And that will actually help you to ground, because we think a lot of you that are listening need some help grounding. And grounding is really just about attuning yourself to the frequency of Mother Earth. Mother Earth is kind of the metronome that keeps you in rhythm, all right? That tells you where you're supposed to be, where you're supposed to be vibrating, to be in resonance with the rest of the planet. And the way that you ground is to get out on the planet herself, to get out on the grass. A lot of the shoes that you're currently wearing don't allow for the subtle electromagnetic energy, the ions that are coming up from Mother Earth to pass through. So natural materials like leather will allow that energy to pass. Barefoot, it depends on the season, but if you can get yourself out there, that will help. Sitting on the ground will help. Or you can just imagine connecting with the heart light of Mother Earth, this beautiful kind of stellar light that exists within Mother Earth. And that will help to put you back in that natural rhythm, which will put your entire body back into balance. Right now, there's so much going on, and you're fed a constant diet of negativity in both your mainstream and alternative news. You're focused on the negative. What's wrong? What's broken? That you are constantly in this stress-filled state. You're in this fight or flight state. You're in your sympathetic nervous system, and we need to get you back out of that, more into the parasympathetic, where the body can go through rest and repair, that you can regenerate, and you're producing a whole different set of chemicals in the body. Your fight or flight response was meant to be short term, to get you out of immediate danger, but you're living there now. And as you ground, that will help to activate that parasympathetic nervous system. So those are some things that you can do in terms of the grounding, working with crystals, holding crystals. They are of the earth. Any crystal, really. But black tourmaline can be excellent for you. Obsidian, hematite, those are some really good ones. Ruby is one that most people don't think of working with to ground, but it's also quite excellent for that. So the grounding is an important piece. So the activation that we're going to share with you is going to help to open you up to that. So there's nothing that you really need to know or do. And we'll talk about, what to do with the activation when we're done. But let's just see where we go. All right. So everyone, just take a nice deep breath. ijo do mene berjukata berjukati inda ar mene bora berjukata berjukata hasato ora mene berjukata berjukati bitkati ni mene berjukata berjukata hasatata iru mara ida re di berindo ru mara jedu mara berjukata berenda da de jedu mene berjukata hasato ora ar mene berjukata berjukati hisa ara ar mene berjukata berjukati ber ar mene berjukata berjukati titikata ntu ina di berjukata ti ber ar mene berjukata berjukati berjukati berjukata anda de birikata he's ada duire mene birikata berjukata birikati da rabere inda alure mene jidda nda dui berjukata berjukati hasakato unanane. Take a nice deep breath. Ondului mene berjudo endo dui mene berjuda de de berjukata berjukati de berjukata dui de berjukata 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 de berjukata duri berjukata berjukata Birakara arraberishkata betkaraberishkati inta ar. Hisa atata arramene bere eza arramene mene berishkata dui birakata hasakata arae. All right, take another nice deep breath. And when you're ready, you can bring your presence back to the room. So typically what we recommend is when you work with an activation, you do it 3 times a day for 3 days in a row. And this helps you to get a sense of the subtle energy so that when it starts to show up in your reality, you can recognize it. You say, oh, that energy, that feels familiar to me. That I want to align with. And the information is now recorded in your energetic field. So you can go back and you can kind of scrub through the video and listen to the activation again if you want, or you can imagine connecting with this moment again. Both things are going to put you in alignment with the resonance. The thing is, for you as humans, you like to give a bit more credence to the things that you experience with the physical senses. And if you're just imagining it, there's a part of you that may say, is this really happening? Is this doing anything? Rest assured it is. But we understand that you might want to have that physical experience. But either way, it will put you in resonance with that energy. All right.
Thank you so much for that activation and your channeling with us today. I have to bring Wendy back.
It was such a pleasure. So feel free to connect with us directly. You don't need Wendy, dear ones. All you have to do is ground, heart center, ask your question and listen. And until then, we will be around. We're watching, we're waiting, and we're sending many well wishes. Hello.
All right. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
While you're recovering from that, I wanted to ask you about what you're going to be doing at the Sedona Ascension Retreat in 2024.
So we're going to be doing a little channeling with the P's. And I think we're going to talk a little bit about manifestation there. I never know exactly in the moment because we do co-create this together and see where we go in the next 3 months. And then I'm also doing a workshop while I'm there and kind of accessing some of your intuitive abilities. So we've got both things going on.
Will you be taking a field trip out to the vortexes?
I'm not sure yet. Sedona is a very magical place. So we'll see. I'll probably be out there a few days beforehand checking out some of those, but I would very much like to. Yeah.
Besides the Sedona Ascension Retreat, do you have anything that you're working on that you want us to know about?
So I do have a couple of things that we do currently every month. I do have a monthly membership working with the Galactic Light Codes in the language of light. That's our Galactic Light Code monthly membership. And then once a month, I do a group session online. I call it the Pleiadian Perspective, where the guides will channel on whatever energies they think it's important for you to focus on. They'll talk a little bit about current events, and then we take questions from the audience and kind of go for there for 2 hours. So we do that once a month. You'll find all the information on that over my website. And there are a few other things in the works. We've got a channeling course that hopefully will be coming in 2024. And a few more events that are kind of in the lineup.
Well, after watching this podcast, people may have questions for you. Are you open to them? And if so, how do they contact you?
So you can email us at info@higherfrequencies.net. You can also hop on over to our website. You'll find a contact form there. That's higherfrequencies.net. And there's more in our shop in terms of programs and things that we have going on, or more information on the Galactic Light Code monthly membership.
Well, before we finish up, can you leave us with one last positive message?
I feel very hopeful about the future. I know we might have some challenging things coming over the next couple years, but I really feel very, very positive as we move through probably the next 2 to 3 years. Once we get through 2026, it feels much lighter and much easier as we go. So I'm hopeful.
Wendy, thank you for your message, and thank you for being my guest.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for watching the JeffMara podcast. I really appreciate you. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. And if you do, there are loyalty badges and other perks depending on your level of membership. All you need to do is click the join button underneath the video to find out more. Thank you for your support.